Scobie is back with a spiteful, lie-filled new book that's poured fuel on the flames. He says that Meghan wrote private letters to King Charles, naming two royals who she accuses of taking part in those supposedly troubling conversations about Archie's skin colour. Scobie says he knew the names of the accused royals, but couldn't use them for legal reasons. That's in the English version of his book. Then, as everybody now knows, the names suddenly appeared in a Dutch translation. The only crisis, I think, that we're facing at the moment, this endgame, as Omid Scobie puts it, is an endgame for Omid Scobie. I'm going to cut through all this crap. I'm going to tell you the names of the two senior royals who are named in that Dutch version of the book. Good evening from London. Welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored. 2.5 years ago, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex sat down with Oprah Winfrey to air a slew of grievances and claims about the royal family that they had deserted. The most incendiary claim was that members of the royal family had raised, quote, concerns in multiple conversations about what skin colour baby Archie's skin would be.
And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What? About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Hold up.
There's
Stop
several
right now.
There's several conversations.
There's a
about
conversation with you?
With Harry.
About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh. And you're not going to tell me who had the conversation?
I think that would be very damaging to them.
Okay.
Compartmentalized
They were
conversations.
concerned that if he were too brown, that would be a problem. Are you saying that?
I wasn't able to follow up with why, but if that's the assumption you're making, I think that feels like a pretty safe one.
You see, that's just an allegation of racism right there. It's not ambiguous. That is Meghan Markle accusing a member of the royal family of being racist, judging somebody according to the colour of their skin and how brown they are. There's no room for thinking it's anything else. Now, the impact of that claim was extraordinary. The claims were reported breathlessly across the world. Tens of millions of people, hundreds of millions, were left with the unavoidable impression that Britain is a racist country with racists at the heart of our royal family.
But just the fact that there is, according to both of them, this ongoing blatant racism, not only in the UK tabloid press, but in the family.
But for some people in this country, a blanket denial of racism, like the one that we heard from Prince William yesterday, just isn't enough.
Buckingham Palace is racist.
Because among the more shocking revelations was that it's sort of overt racism she faced within the royal family.
But here it is, a couple that's truly in love. And the thing that you want to question is their skin tone.
I hope all those people are having severe second thoughts or buyer's remorse about believing what Meghan Markle and Prince Harry said. I don't need to, because that day I said I didn't believe a word of it. And I had to leave my job because I didn't believe them, even though I think they were lying. Well, for 2.5 years, there's been frenzied speculation about who these supposedly racist royals are. Just about every single member of the royal household has been implicated in the rumours at some point. And that surely isn't fair, is it? Just guilt by collective association? Especially if you believe, as I do, as I've always said, that the claims, in my opinion, are completely and utterly baseless. That speculation reached fever pitch again this week because of this Weasley lickspittle Omid Scobie. He's the client journalist of the Sussexes. He's always the first to publish their Soviet-style official statements and defend their indefensible deeds. He's like that guy, Comical Ali. Do you remember him? Who fronted up for Saddam Hussein in the Iraq War and would literally say, we've got him on the run as the American howitzers were coming over his head. Well, Meghan Markle famously denied briefing Scobie for his last book, Finding Freedom. But then she was forced a few months after it came out to apologise in court and admit that actually she'd briefed one of her aides to go and tell Scobie all the laundry. So when it emerged that the latest book contain new details on those race accusations, well, let's just say I've made my own assumptions about where Scobie could have got that information from, because it wasn't King Charles. So that only leaves the other person on the end of that correspondence. That's Meghan Markle, or maybe Harry, her husband, or maybe one of their mutual friends that Scobie keeps boasting he has. Scobie says he knew the names of the accused royals, but couldn't use them for legal reasons. That's in the English version of his book. Then, as everybody now knows, the names suddenly appeared in a Dutch translation of the book. And by appeared, I mean they were sent to journalists who couldn't believe what they were reading. They went into bookstores where people could buy it. Well, last night I decided this was all ridiculous, and it was time to name the two royals implicated in those racism claims. They are, as I said last night, King Charles, Prince Charles as he was then, and Catherine, Princess of Wales. I did that for several reasons. First, the speculation was once again raging out of control, as it has for 2.5 years. Second, it made no sense that Dutch journalists and Dutch people who bought copies before the publisher withdrew them would know these names, members of our royal family, when the British people were prevented from knowing them. Thirdly, once you know the names, it becomes blindingly obvious to anyone with even half a brain that these allegations are ridiculous. Whatever your view of the monarchy, I don't think any serious person really believes that anything they've seen or heard from King Charles or the Princess of Wales suggests they have even the tiniest racist bone in their bodies, or would judge anybody according to the shade of their skin. And once again, it's worth remembering what Prince Harry eventually said about these accusations when he was promoting his book. And before we play the clip, just to remind you, after launching this racist bombshell 2.5 years ago, it never got mentioned again. Not in the 6-part Netflix series, which mentioned everything else in their lives. Not in the 12-part podcasts for Spotify that Meghan Markle did, never mentioned. And it never got mentioned in Harry's over 400-page book. 150,000 words of stuff about his entire life, but not a mention of the supposed racism by members of his own family, which he had launched as a missile against that family on Oprah Winfrey. So this is what he said to Tom Bradby at ITN at the start of this year when promoting the book where he didn't mention it.
In the Oprah interview, you accuse members of your family of racism. You don't even...
Well, the British press said that.
Right.
Did Meghan ever mention that they were racist?
She said there were troubling comments about...
there was concern about his skin colour.
Right. Wouldn't you describe that as essentially racist?
I wouldn't, not having lived within that family.
God, he's such a dimwit, isn't he? He's just dim as ditch water. He literally thinks we're going to watch the clips back from Oprah and not think that she was saying that the royal family had been racist. How dumb does he think we are? So Harry performs this dramatic U-turn. Oh, we never meant to suggest they were racist. It was the terrible British press. They were the ones who said it was racism. We just meant unconscious bias. You know what that's become a euphemism for? We actually haven't got any evidence of someone being racist. We just think it's kind of unconscious, on the sly, right? It's kind of there, but we can't prove it. It's like we think they might be. Yeah, not good enough. Not when it comes to members of the royal family, whose reputations are on a global stage. So why should I stand back and let a proven liar like Omid Scobie, a man who claims in this book as a fact that I have regular phone chats with Queen Camilla? Regular. Do you know how many times I've spoken to Queen Camilla on the phone in my entire 58-year life? 0. Not once. It's not just not regular. It's never happened. We've never had a phone chat. So he's a liar. And he lied again about when apparently I called Meghan Markle Princess Pinocchio on that fateful last day of Good Morning Britain. Apparently Camilla immediately contacted me to thank me on behalf of the firm. No, she didn't. Another lie. Complete lie. So Scobie prepared to lie about me, about these little things, which don't really amount to a row of beans. Why should we believe anything else he has to say? All he's doing is dragging the whole royal family through the mud all over again, reigniting these racism charges because he wants to sell books and make money. Well, Scobie gave another interview this morning, in which he again denied working with Meghan Markle, and he also denied ever using the names in any draft of his book.
I'm as frustrated as everyone else. I make it very clear in this book that I, in every way possible, want to adhere to the laws surrounding this subject. It's why I've been very careful in how it's described in the book, and it's why I've never spoken about it beyond what I've said in the public domain before. The reality is, though, is that this is information that is not privy just to me.
A liar. A barefaced liar. He wants us to believe that he only submitted a draft in the English version, which never mentioned the names, but that somebody in the Netherlands got hold of it and added the names and added entire paragraph in one part of this into the manuscript before it went to the printers. A lethal saboteur. Who would do that? Have you ever met any author in history, because I haven't, who's had that happen to their manuscript? That on the way to the printers in a foreign country like the Netherlands, they got into the manuscript and changed it without the author knowing anything about it? No. It doesn't pass what we call the smell test. Mr. Scobie stinks when it comes to the smell test. Now, he thinks I'm completely wrong to assume an earlier version of his book included the names and was sent for translation, only for his lawyers to take them out of the final edition, which I think is the most likely explanation. It's therefore rather inconvenient for him that the Dutch translator has told reporters tonight that she'd only translated what was written down on the manuscript. She said the names of the royals were there in black and white. I didn't add them. I just did what I was paid to do, and that was translate the book from English into Dutch. Now, at this point, the deafening silence from Harry and Meghan becomes a little more than deafening. It becomes pretty shameful, because they usually race to condemn and denounce any press reports that we dislike, particularly if it involves any leaks from private correspondence. And Meghan Markle, ironically, was forced to admit that she colluded with Omid Scobie on his last book in a court action she took against a newspaper over private correspondence with her father. So why have they remained so silent about Omid Scobie's lies and also about his leaking of the private correspondence between Meghan Markle and King Charles that contain these names? Is it because they were involved in him getting this information? Is it because, I don't know, the Tooth Fairy came down and did it, or Santa Claus, or, for want of a better third example, Pinocchio? The public can, of course, make their own minds up about all of this. It shouldn't take long. And the same goes for the baseless accusations of royal racism. Nobody, I repeat, really thinks King Charles or the Princess of Wales are racist. Nobody. That's part of the reason, actually, why I decided to put their names out there. It's called lancing the boil. It's called removing what has been a simmering threat deployed by Meghan and Harry and deployed by Omid Scobie as an unspoken threat. We've got these names, and if we don't get what we want, we're going to use them. Well, now they can't do that. I've been at the sharp end of British journalism for 30 years. I've seen royal crises come and go. I remember after Diana died, everybody predicted that was the end of the monarchy. But it wasn't. The monarchy survived, and it thrived with our great Queen Elizabeth II, and it's doing so again now with King Charles, who's doing a brilliant job as the head of our great royal family and the head of the great monarchy. The only crisis, I think, that we're facing at the moment, this end game, as Omid Scobie puts it, is an end game for Omid Scobie. So let me start with you, Tessa. So, given you normally park yourself in the defending the indefensible about all things Sussex, what do you think of Scobie's late? Just when it seemed like they were getting off the radar, back comes Scobie with a series of apparently damning revelations about all the royals, apart from the two in Montecito.
Yeah, from all the extracts that we've had access to, and from the interviews that Omid's done in the likes of Paris Match, certainly he's parked his tanks firmly on their lawn. Queen Victoria recommended against royals having friendships, and if Omid was once the Sussex's friend, I bet they could flick him off like slime right now, because the timing's terrible, and I feel that Omid is actually behind the curve on this. While you've moved on a bit, I think, I'll give you credit, and Harry and Meghan, to an extent, I think, after the sort of bomb of the Netflix and the book, have been really quite stum. Omid seems to be sort of stuck in the past.
Well, also, he's a liar. And I'll tell you how I know he's a liar, because he writes a bit about me in the book.
I know, I was going to ask you about that.
I got a copy of the book today, and I just checked, as you do. It's a digital copy. I did a little search. Up I come 3 or 4 times. And on one occasion, he states, as a fact, that I have regular phone conversations with Queen Camilla. For the record, I have never had a single phone conversation with Queen Camilla. Now, he says, as a fact, in his book, that we have regular phone conversations. That I know, personally know, is an absolute lie. He also says that when I said on Good Morning Britain that Meghan Markle was Princess Pinocchio, that apparently she reached out to me, Queen Camilla, to thank me for standing up for the firm.
Did she?
I had 0 contact with Queen Camilla around that time at all.
So you've got no embossed thank you notes from Camilla
nothing.
Before she was a queen?
Nothing.
Is there any communication?
I did, however, as I said publicly at the time, have conversations with several other members of the royal family, but it wasn't Queen Camilla. So my point, it was come to Hillary. Hillary, I know personally that just the little bits about me are completely untrue. They're lies. So why should I believe any of this stuff?
Well, you're absolutely right to question it. I remember the time that you said that if she told you the weather, you wouldn't believe her. A few things here I would say. They say if you're going to lie, be big, go bold. He states things so factually that I think your average person, of course, they can't sift through things. They don't know that you know that these were mistruths and bold-faced lies. So if he goes so big, people will actually almost assume it's got to be true. I'll tell you something, though, Piers, that someone that nobody really is mentioning and no one's talking about, and that is Meghan Markle's dear friend, very close friend that she's posted online, whom she loves, and that is Marcus Anderson. Well, as we know, Omid Scobie has a very close relationship to him. Who knows how much of this is actually coming from him, and maybe that's the source of a lot of these lies as well, whom he's quoting.
It's a really good point, because we know because she went under oath in a court case, Meghan Markle had to admit she briefed an aide to then brief Scobie and the co-author. And what about this, Tessa? There's a point in the book where he talks about the contents of letters between King Charles and Meghan Markle, in which 2 members of the royal household, I know who they supposedly are, right, these 2 people. Let's call them royal household. That 2 of them had expressed these infamous concerns about the skin colour of baby Archie before he was born, right? But my question is, obviously he's not got that from King Charles.
No.
So he can only have got it from Meghan Markle or her friends or people she's told this to, right? So, you know, it's 2 things, this book. One is blatant lies. Secondly, stuff he can only have got from Meghan Markle. Harry and Meghan's claims about supposed racists in the royal family have left a predictable and poisonous legacy for the last few years. We live in an age where grievances are given the benefit of the doubt, where the establishment is toxic by default, where my truth apparently means more than the truth. They knew the power their words would hold, and many people across the world took their words at face value. Now, almost 3 years on, Britain is still dealing with the fallout from this.
And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What? About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Hold up.
There's
Stop
several
right now.
There's several conversations.
There's a conversation with you?
With Harry.
About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh. And you're not going to tell me who had the conversation?
I think that would be very damaging to them.
Okay.
Compartmentalized
they were
conversations.
concerned that if he were too brown, that would be a problem. Are you saying that?
I wasn't able to follow up with why, but if that's the assumption you're making, I think that feels like a pretty safe one.
You may recall that I lost my previous job for responding to these claims by saying I didn't believe a word of it. Well, Harry and Meghan have never provided any evidence for that highly incendiary claim. It's not like they haven't had the chance to. After all, they pumped out 6 hours of self-indulgent bilge on Netflix, trashing Britain and the press for its racism, but didn't mention what they said on Oprah. Harry read 150,000 words of family-bashing poison in his memoir Spare and told the TV studios to promote it. It didn't mention what they'd said to Oprah Winfrey. Meghan had a 12-part podcast on Spotify. Didn't mention it either. It was like it never happened, like it disappeared. Clearly, neither of them gave a damn about royal protocol or family privacy. In fact, they built a whole industry around violating their own privacy and that of their relatives. Instead of backing up those claims about racism on their relentless publicity tour, Harry did a sort of strange U-turn, didn't he, a few months ago? Tried to pretend they'd never said them. It was us. It was the media.
In the Oprah interview, you accuse members of your family of racism. You don't even...
Well, the British press said that.
Right.
Did Meghan ever mention that they were racist?
She said there were troubling comments about
there was
skin
concern
colour.
about his skin colour.
Right. Wouldn't you describe that as essentially racist?
I wouldn't, not having lived within that family.
Took him 2 years to do that U-turn. 2 years of the royal family are a bunch of racists flying around the world. I was in America through a lot of that period, and they all believed it because it had appeared on Oprah. Then he says, I never meant to say anything about racism. What are you all talking about? It's the beastly media. Well, now Harry and Meghan's lick-spittle client journalist Omid Scobie, the man who lied about his age, said he was 33 when in fact he was 38, a bit older now, said he never used private jets and then got reminded of an Instagram picture of him the week before he denied that this week, showing him on a private jet. The man who said that I have regular phone calls with Queen Camilla, regular phone calls. Never had one phone call with Queen Camilla in my entire life. I'd like to, but she doesn't call. Well, Scobie is back with a spiteful, lie-filled new book that's poured fuel on the flames. He says that Meghan wrote private letters to King Charles, naming 2 royals who she accuses of taking part in those supposedly troubling conversations about Archie's skin colour. Scobie initially said he knew the names but couldn't legally report them. But of course, he could have done outside of the UK. He could have done it in America if he wanted to, where the book is published. He could have done it anywhere. But he said he never names names, which is another of his lies. And yet overnight they were sensationally revealed, suddenly, out of nowhere, in the Dutch version of Scobie's book. Journalists had been sent copies and the book was briefly on sale in bookstores before being suddenly withdrawn in a dash by the publishers. Scobie initially said it was a translation error, which didn't really make any sense because how do you mistranslate names? They're either there or they're not. The publisher now says it wasn't translation, it was simply an error. But how did that error happen? How is there an entire different version appearing in a Dutch edition of this book? The consequence of that error is that millions of people online around the world now know the royals are again being implicated in what I think is a completely baseless claim of inferred racism. There is, again, massive speculation about who the people are who were supposedly making comments about Archie's skin colour, which is incredibly unfair to all the royal family. They've all been tarred with this brush now for years. Well, I'm going to end all this nonsense because, frankly, if a book is on the streets in Holland, available to Dutch people, containing names that Omid Scobie, the lick-spittle scribe for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, the man who you may remember denied they had any involvement in the last book. And so did Meghan. Do you remember? No, had nothing to do with it. But then in court, many months after the book was published, under oath, she had to admit she had emailed her aides briefing notes for when they met Scobie. So she was one of his primary sources on that first book. Now again, we're being told she had nothing to do with this. And maybe she didn't. And maybe we should be believing Omid Scobie when he says he did not ever write these names down in any draft of his book. It just somehow popped up in the Dutch version of the book. How? I've written 10 books, I think it is now. I've never had a version of my book pop up in a foreign edition that contained unbelievably damning allegations about 2 of the most famous people in the world, and I had nothing to do with it and didn't know how it got there, and nor did anybody else. How does it get there, Omid? Surely you as the author, I mean, you must be furious, right? You must be demanding. Heads roll. And you want names, don't you, ironically? Omid, about who did this to you? Who besmirched your reputation as an author? I would, Omid. I'd want to know right now. Especially if I was trying to convince the world that I had nothing to do with it myself. And I'd never, ever put these names in writing. And maybe some lawyer had come along and told me not to. I mean, that couldn't possibly have happened because you've given us your word. And as I've established so far in this monologue, your word is your bond and should be taken as sacrosanct. Well, I'm going to cut through all this crap. I'm going to tell you the names of the 2 senior royals who are named in that Dutch version of the book. Because frankly, if Dutch people wandering into a bookshop can pick it up and see these names, then you, British people here, who actually pay for the British royal family, you're entitled to know too. And then we can have a more open debate about this whole farrago, because I don't believe any racist comments were ever made by any of the royal family. And until there is actual evidence of those comments being made, I will never believe it. But now we can start the process of finding out if they ever got uttered, what the context was, and whether there was any racial intent at all. Like I say, I don't believe there was. The royals who are named in this book are King Charles and Catherine, Princess of Wales. It's almost 4 years now since Harry and Meghan made the groundbreaking announcement. They were quitting the royal family, stepping down as senior royals, moving to the United States and finding freedom. Well, since that moment, they've systematically and relentlessly exploited their existing royal status to make as much money as possible, while simultaneously trashing the royals and the monarchy to preserve their exposure and relevance. I think it's time we brought the Sussex circus to a formal end. Conservative MP Bob Seeley is now introducing a bill in Parliament to strip them formally of their titles. The Duke and Duchess can be Mr. and Mrs. like the rest of us, he said. Someone doesn't want to be a royal, that's a decision we respect. They shouldn't keep the titles and privileges if they trash an institution that plays an important part in our nation's life. I think he's right. And as he also says, the baseless racism claims that are now embroiled the King and Princess of Wales, well, they should be the final straw, shouldn't they? The author behind those damning claims, who claims he wasn't the author behind those damning claims, but who else could he have been the author of those damning claims, given it was in the manuscript of his own book in which these damning claims were made? Sussex lapdog Omid Scobie is still tying himself in the web of his own lies.
Yeah, what a series of events, right? And what a frustrating experience for me for a book that was so heavily vetted, legaled, I's dotted, T's crossed, and a book that I was extremely proud of, now completely overshadowed by an event that has caused me a lot of frustration as well. We have a full investigation going on into this series of events that happened.
Yeah, I know you're frustrated, buddy, but imagine how frustrated King Charles is, or the Princess of Wales, that somehow they got called racists in a manuscript you claim you didn't actually draft that way. That's frustrating, isn't it? When the entire world is encouraged to think that you were named as racists. Little bit more frustrating than you not being able to work out why a draft of your own book appeared in the Netherlands and was translated from a copy that had the names on it that was sent to them apparently by your agent. How did your agent get that if you didn't write it? Does your agent write your books, Omid? Well, the Times has reported, like I said, that earlier version of the book did contain the names, and it was sent to the Dutch publisher. Harry and Meghan have stood by in stunning silence. So unlike them, isn't it? When private conversations of the kind that Meghan had with Charles in private letters began to circulate in this book as well, containing the names of the 2 people that she and Harry claim were racially insensitive about the potential skin colour of their baby. Now, these 2 can't normally wait to set the record straight, to sue, to go to court, to hold people to proper account for invasion of private correspondence or conversations. Why aren't they doing it now? They claim that they had nothing to do with Omid Scobie's new book. But you might remember Meghan claiming that about his last book. And then a strange thing happened. She was suing a newspaper, ironically, for invading her privacy over private correspondence. Rather similar to the situation we find ourselves in here. And when it came to the court case, after the book had been published that she had nothing to do with, she was forced to apologise because it turned out that not only had she had something to do with it, she'd given briefing notes to her aide to go to a meeting with Omid Scobie and brief him for the book. So she was a primary source for that book. So I don't know what you make of the silence from the Sussexes. We're into nearly week 2 now of a deafening, damning silence. Weird, right? Tessa Dunlop, you've been seething away quietly to my left. I could see you simmering, so simmer away.
You appall me, Piers. Occasionally, I think, no, he's found the light. He's seen the light. He's no longer crashing on about Harry. And then this appalling diatribe we've just had to sit through. You claiming, you lying there, suggesting that you're putting their names out effectively to save the monarchy. You put their names out for clicks. You're no better than Omid Scobie. In fact, you're worse. You call him a lickle spittle. You're a great big gob of phlegm that's just landed on the royal doormat. I don't know how you slept last night. I struggled to sleep thinking about what you'd done. I really can't. And yes, I did. I did know that.
All right, stop the performative crap. Honestly, it's performative crap.
No, let's just hold on to your
calm
words.
down. Have a civilised conversation.
I'm not calm.
The idea you didn't sleep over this. You don't even know these people.
I was properly angry by your hypocrisy. And then
What's
you
the
sit
hypocrisy?
there, Piers, because you spend day in, day out, you're pro-monarchy, the wonderful Queen, wonderful Charles, and then you go and dob Kate and Charles right in it when one's at COP28.
Oh, no,
yes, you did.
Wait a minute. Oh, no, no.
Yes, you
no,
did.
no, no, no,
Oh,
no.
yes, you
I'll
did.
tell you who did that. Omid Scobie. Because these names appeared in a draft of his book, which was published in the Netherlands.
And they were
for
under
sale
the line.
to Netherlands
It was
people.
tittle-tattle till you popped it on a Murdoch platform.
Yeah.
And now you've just had the gall to suggest
You're
that
on a
private
Murdoch platform right
conversation-
now.
I know I am.
You got a
and
problem
I'm
with
just
that?
correcting the record.
You got a problem with that?
For the record, that was Piers' highly dubious opinion. I've got a problem with you tonight, Piers. A real problem.
Why would you have a problem with being on a Murdoch platform?
Because
You're here now.
because what you did was you put those names.
You're being
you took
paid
them,
to appear.
Yes, I know, but you took the names.
Why are you doing
the
that?
rumour.
Why are you
took
being
the
paid to
rumour
appear
and
here?
you put it on an official platform.
Why are you being paid?
You turned it from fiction
Why
to
have
fact.
you accepted money from a Murdoch
To
platform?
challenge you about your behaviour and hypocrisy. And by the way, just the word baseless.
So you're
How
calling-
do you know that Meghan's rumours were baseless? How do you know what she accused
Where's
the
the
royal
evidence?
family of?
Any of it?
But where's the evidence that it was baseless?
Where?
Well, obviously, it's very difficult when the two accusers are the chief witnesses.
They couldn't even decide on Oprah Winfrey what year these supposed conversations had happened or how many there were, right? They couldn't decide what year.
Doesn't mean it didn't happen. You
Really?
didn't take notes and write in your diary when
Really?
something happened.
Let me get a Dickie.
I just want to come in. You mentioned the Oprah interview, and quite frankly, Meghan said that it happened, the conversation happened when she was pregnant. About 10 minutes later, Harry came into the interview and said it happened before they were married.
Right.
So when did it happen? And did it happen? And there's a big question mark. I will take issue with you naming yesterday, and I made that point this morning. You are a bit of a law unto yourself.
He's worse than a law
Excuse
unto
me,
himself.
I didn't interrupt you.
Actually, just on the law point, it was entirely lawful what I did. So I did seek legal advice. I got very good, sound legal advice. And actually, there's no question, I didn't take the law onto myself. I actually applied the letter of the law. This information had been published in the Netherlands. Dutch people were free to read it. And I took a view, it was ridiculous, that British people couldn't be aware of this information. I also said, when I named them, that I didn't believe a word of the racist allegations made against them.
I didn't either. I didn't believe anything of that interview. It was just a diatribe of absolute nonsense, as is the book, Endgame. And as you rightly say, Endgame, the only person in Endgame is Scobie. But I did take issue in mentioning him last night. Yes, you have the Brits have a right to know. It's in the Dutch translation. But there are those who will say agree with you. There are those who disagree with you.
Well, many of the papers who've held off apparently tonight are going to name them.
You gave them no choice, Piers.
You always got a choice. Sorry, you always have a choice.
Everybody's got a choice.
Everyone has a choice. Everyone had a choice when it was published in the Netherlands not to repeat the names, right? If they're all going to repeat them tonight in the papers, they were just a day after us, right? And I have a show called Uncensored for a reason. I don't believe in self-censorship. I don't believe when the Dutch people can read this information in a book available in bookstores, as some of them had already bought copies, that British people should be denied that information. And the information, by the way, is hugely significant. We've waited 2.5 years to find out who these members of the royal family were that Meghan Markle and Prince...
weird people like you with an obsession, Piers, have been waiting 2.5 years.
No, actually the entire country has.
No, that's just it's a misrepresentation of most of the country.
What I actually want to know is, he said he had no help from the Sussexes, and yet, on the other hand, he said he saw the letters.
Yeah.
So how did he see the letters?
How has he got the information?
Exactly.
He's not got it from King Charles.
No, it's all come...